I'll make sure you never teach again, you old hag." Those words from Chelsea Martinez, the richest kid at Riverside High, rang through the hallways. Miss Thompson, our 62-year-old English teacher, stood there stunned, her weathered hands trembling as she held her worn leather briefcase. All because Miss Thompson had given Chelsea an F on her essay. An F she absolutely deserved, since everyone knew she'd paid someone to write it, and they'd done a terrible job. I'm Jake Cooper, a junior at Riverside High, and I watched this whole nightmare unfold. Chelsea's father was the biggest real estate developer in town and donated millions to our school. She thought that meant she owned the place. Miss Thompson had been teaching at Riverside for over 30 years. She was strict but fair, the kind of teacher who actually cared if we learned something. She stayed after school to help struggling students and wrote amazing college recommendation letters. She'd even helped my older sister get into Yale last year. But none of that mattered to Chelsea. The next day, Chelsea walked into class with her father, a tall man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She'd clearly been crying, her makeup perfectly smeared for maximum effect. "This teacher has been bullying my daughter," Mr. Martinez announced to our principal, who had also been called in. "She's targeting Chelsea because of our family's success. My daughter works hard, and this kind of discrimination is unacceptable." Miss Thompson tried to explain about the obviously plagiarized essay, but Chelsea started sobbing dramatically. "She's always hated me. She called me stupid in front of everyone." That was a complete lie. Miss Thompson had never called anyone stupid in her life, but Chelsea wasn't done. She'd gathered 3 of her friends, all from wealthy families, who backed up her story. They claimed Miss Thompson regularly humiliated Chelsea and gave her unfair grades. I wanted to speak up, to tell the truth. But Chelsea caught my eye across the room and smiled that cold smile of hers. Everyone knew what happened to kids who crossed her. Last year, when a student had reported her for cheating on a test, their family's small business had mysteriously lost all its customers after Chelsea's father bought the building and tripled the rent. The principal, Dr. Roberts, looked uncomfortable, but didn't say much. We all knew the school depended on donations from families like the Martinezes. 2 days later, Miss Thompson was gone. The official story was that she had chosen to retire early, but everyone knew the truth. Chelsea had gotten her way. Again. That's when something in me snapped.
I'd spent my whole life being careful, flying under the radar. My family wasn't rich or powerful. My mum worked 2 jobs since Dad died, and I had a scholarship to Riverside. I couldn't afford to make waves. But seeing Miss Thompson forced out, watching Chelsea strut around like she'd won some great victory, it was too much. I decided to fight back. Not with lies or schemes, but with the truth. First, I gathered evidence. I still had all the group chat screenshots where Chelsea had bragged about paying someone to write her essays. I had recordings from study group sessions where she'd openly talked about getting teachers fired if they didn't give her good grades. Then I started interviewing other students. Turns out, lots of them had stories about Chelsea's bullying and cheating. They'd just been too scared to speak up. The real breakthrough came when I found Chelsea's essay writer through social media. He was a college dropout who made money writing papers for rich kids. When I explained what had happened to Miss Thompson, he got angry. Apparently, Chelsea had stiffed him on payment, claiming his work wasn't good enough. He gave me all their payment messages and the original essay drafts. But I knew going to the school board wouldn't be enough. Chelsea's father had them in his pocket too. I needed to go bigger. I compiled everything into a detailed report and sent it to 3 places: the State Education Board, the local newspaper, and most importantly, Chelsea's father's biggest business rivals. The story exploded. The newspaper ran a front-page article about academic integrity and the influence of wealthy donors in schools. Chelsea's father's competitors used the scandal to challenge his contracts, claiming he lacked ethical business practices. Suddenly, Mr. Martinez cared a lot more about his daughter's behavior than protecting her ego. Chelsea came to school the next day, looking like a different person. Gone was the designer makeup and superior smirk. Her father had cut off her credit cards and car privileges. She had to ride the bus like regular students. But the best part, the school board had to do damage control. They publicly apologized to Miss Thompson and begged her to come back, with a raise and full benefits. I'll never forget the day Miss Thompson walked back into our classroom. The entire class erupted in applause. Even some teachers came to the door to clap. Chelsea was required to make a public apology, attend mandatory counselling, and do community service. Her father had to step down from the school board, and the school implemented strict new policies about donor influence. But here's what really shocked everyone. 6 months later, Chelsea came to Miss Thompson's classroom after school. I was there getting help with a college application essay, so I saw the whole thing. Chelsea's eyes were red, but this time the tears looked real. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking in counselling. I was awful to you, to everyone. I was spoiled and mean, and I want to do better." Miss Thompson did something then that showed why she was such an amazing teacher. She smiled, pulled out a chair, and said, "Would you like help with your essay? Your real essay this time?" Chelsea nodded, wiping her eyes. I watched them work together for an hour. Chelsea struggled. She'd never really learned how to write properly, but Miss Thompson was patient. By the end, Chelsea had the beginning of a decent essay about learning hard lessons and facing consequences. That was 2 years ago. Today, Miss Thompson still teaches at Riverside. She's helped countless students get into college, including me. I'm starting at UCLA this fall. Chelsea? She had to work hard to bring up her grades without cheating. She didn't get into an Ivy League school like she'd always assumed she would, but she did get accepted to our state university on her own merit, and I hear she's doing well there. Her father's business recovered, but the scandal changed things. He started a scholarship program for low-income students and instituted a strict ethical business practices code. As for me, I learned something important. Sometimes standing up for what's right is scary, but the truth is more powerful than money or influence. You just have to be brave enough to tell it. Last week, I visited Miss Thompson before leaving for college. She was helping a freshman with Shakespeare after school, just like always. On her desk was a new photo, her with this year's graduating class, including Chelsea, all smiling together. "You know what the real victory was?" Miss Thompson told me as I was leaving. "Not getting my job back. It was seeing Chelsea grow into someone who understands that respect has to be earned, not bought." She looked at the photo and smiled. Sometimes the hardest lessons teach us the most. Walking out of Riverside for the last time, I thought about how one spoiled rich kid's attempt to ruin a teacher's life had ended up changing our whole school for the better. It just goes to show, you never know how standing up for what's right might turn out.